We're also going to look at background images and background colors. So how can we put a lovely image in the back of some text or something in the middle, putting background colors to these blocks that we've been creating with grids and lists. We'll also look at how we use spacing. So generally in voice, your theme that you're using has already got set margins, set padding that create the spacing around all of the objects, the text, the images. It's all there for you. But sometimes we might need to create a little bit of distance between those things. So that's what we'll have a look at. Okay, let's have a look at colours. So here's my home page as it stands on my test site. Now I could leave it like this and it looks perfectly fine. I've got the titles are separating the sections. So the titles are this big text, you know, people can see, okay, you read this, you scroll down, you see this, and the grids give it a nice layout. So I could leave it like that. But the other thing I could do is add some colour in the background just to separate these sections, which can help the eye move down the page easier. So what I'm going to do is add a coloured section behind the upcoming events. So to do that, I need to add two includelets. And what I want to do is I want to put a box above the upcoming events and a box afterwards. And the one I'm going to use is called, I'm going to add includelet. And it's thankfully at the top. It's called background begin and background end. So I'm literally telling the background what color I want it to be to start behind the object. And then I want to, the background end is just like a full stop. It just says, whoa, stop the color right there. Thank you very much. I don't want it going all the way down the page. So yes, I could put color in behind the whole page if I wanted to, but I want it to stop after the events. So that's what I'm going to do now. So the first thing I choose is the background begin and ignore everything else right now. I just want to choose a color. So I'll go red. So I've got a color now, and that's all I did. I just literally click on the box and I choose from the color wheel. I'm going to ignore everything else for the moment, and let's just put that in. So I'm going to choose to ignore everything else. All I want is the color. Save changes. So I want it to begin. I want some color. Then I want the events, and then I need it to stop. So then I add my second includelet, which is the background end. And just save changes. Ignore everything else. Just do that. And I'm just going to move that, click and drag it, and move it after my, so I've got the background begin, upcoming events, and then background end. And I'll publish that to show you what that looks like. So this is step one. So there you go. There's my color in the background of my events. As you can see there, because of the color I chose for my background block, my text has disappeared. So I'm just highlighting it, but when I don't, you can see it should say upcoming events, and I can't see it. And it's because my primary color is this kind of reddish color, and I can't see it. So I can change that by, if I come back into my layout. And I'm just going to configure my background begin includelet again. So that's where the color is, and it's where I can make other options. So I can change my text and my header color. That was a header color. So I'm actually just going to choose, that was a reddish color. I'd need it to be really light. I'll just pick that for now. And I could choose the text color to change as well if I had some text in between. I don't, so I'm gonna leave that now. I'm going to add in some padding, and I'm also going to add in a bigger margin here. So top margin and top padding. So I want a bit more space between that picture of the forest and the next bit. I want a bit more white space there. I also want a bit more red space between upcoming events and the top. So I'll do that now. So if I go to top margin, I'll make it 50 actually so we can see it. And I'm also going to make my top padding 50. So remember, at the moment it looks like this. I've got this tiny margin. I can see by eye that's about 10 pixels. And that's probably the same, 10 pixels there. If I now publish this, save changes and publish. And I'll just refresh that page, watch the jump. There we go. So that's my extra 50 pics there. That's the margin, and that's the 50 pix that I put, which is too deep really, but that's the 50 pix that I put there to increase the space. I can, of course, put other stuff in, so I'll just show you finally before we play around for a couple of minutes. I could also put in other content. So don't forget, I've put this around the upcoming events, but I can put more content in between. So if I just add a custom content, and I'm going to make it inline so that it doesn't have it be in a box. So I'm going to say no to the title, ignore everything else. I'm just going to put some text here. Here and shadow, just random. If I now save changes, I know I'm going quite quickly, but if I save changes and I move that to before the upcoming events, and I'll just publish that. So you can see I can put as many objects as I like inside that color. I might choose to do something like Elmington Community Gardens for the homepage, but also for their other the sort of top level menu items, they use an image which is within the width of the content. So if I just scroll down, you see how it's lined up with the text. So that's inside the content. And they've got that same at the top of each page. You could do what Superhighways do, which is to have a full window. So that image goes over the edge of the content. You can see where the content is. And then it uses these full width kind of background colors. So there's sort of balance between those. So often if you're using background colors in this way, you might find, especially if you've got longer pages with background width colors, you might want to go for a heavier top. But you can do that in another way, which is a slender way, which is what here do. And here you can see there's just a sort of thinner, which is what they call very wide image, which is just a way of kind of separating and adding a bit of texture and color from the content. And then they've got a kind of full width title, which is in a custom includelet on it by itself, and then a left and right custom includelet there. So there are sort of different ways of thinking about your homepage layout, but also what kind of design feature you want to have, and then kind of stick with that a little bit. Let's get started with one of these. It's the same thing each time, no matter what style you want in terms of those top level images. It is a background begin and end, which is quite a straightforward way of doing that. So I'm going to come into my layout tab and create a new revision to make changes. So there's what we do. That's what's at the top of my my home page is this. So you can see here, this is a custom content includelet, but I could add in an image at the top. So I'm going to add includelet now and choose the background begin. And this time, instead of choosing a color, we're going to select a graphic. So I'm just going to pick something I've got already. And let me have a look at autumn and something fairly standard. Here we go. I'll go for my colourful autumn leaves. And that will just pop that in for me. I can ignore the colour this time because it's either or. And then this is the background width. Let's try setting a fixed aspect ratio for it and save changes. Now, don't forget with a background begin, it always puts includelets at the bottom. So I need to move it to the top because that's where I want my image. I also need to tell it where to stop. So I need a background end. So I'm going to add includelet and background end and save changes. And again, I need to move this up because I want the full stop to be just after the image. So I don't want it to go over any other content, that image. I don't want it in the background of everything. So now I've got my background begin, my background end, and I will publish and show you what that looks like on the live. Okay, I don't know why it didn't like natural resource. It's forcing me to choose a ratio, which is fine. So I'm going to look at my margin. So decreasing this margin at the top and increasing this margin at the bottom. But I'm also going to make this image a little bit narrower. So that's the three things I'm going to do next. So I'll come back into my layout tab. and I'll create a new revision and I'll configure my background begin. That's where all the action happens, really. So just think the begin, that's where the beginnings of everything, really. Got my graphic, don't need to do anything with that. What I'll do is this is where these what you don't usually normally use these kind of very wide um, items are for doing things like this. This is when you want a strip of an image to show, and you can use it and you can use it in other places as well. But as we saw on the here homepage, this is what they've done here. So I'm going to pick the widest one. We might want to have a go with the top margin being -20 pixels is probably about right. I'm just trying to get rid of the white space. There we go. So now I know, and that's just doing that by eye. Just have a look at your settings in your background begin and just play around and see what it does. So I might do content or column snug and just have a look at what they do for you. So a couple of things I can do. Let me just create a new revision to make changes and I'll configure that background begin. So one thing I wanted, let's have a look at that first, actually. So I could put some text over it. And don't forget, this is the begin, this is the end, the full stop. So I need to put something in the middle if I want to add text. So I'm going to add includelet and add a custom content, because that's what I can add text to, add anything I like to. I don't want it in a panel. I'm going to make it inline, so it's just text on the background. So don't forget, inline means just making it look like it's on whatever the background is. I don't want it in a box, so I'm going to put it inline. I'm going to ignore the title. So I'm going to say no, but I'll give it a title. So let's call it about for a minute. I can ignore the graphic, so I don't want to put a graphic on the left and right because I've already got a background image, so we just ignore the graphic bit, all of that. All I want to do is add the text. So let's just call this Community Cafe. We're absolutely amazing. Of course we are. Amazing, join us. There we go. So I might want to give this a header. So the biggest heading I can get is heading 3. I could make that bigger if I wanted to by going into the format. Is that it's very rare that you'll make this change, but if I did want to see if that was bigger, for example, I could make it a bit bigger and still leave it as a heading 3. But that's a rare choice, and most of the time you just stick within your. I'm going to bring that down a bit. So there's my header, there's my text for now, and all I need to do is save changes. But of course, it's not in the right place. So they always pop in at the bottom. So I'm just going to click and drag and move that in between the begin and end. So I want the content in between those two things. And then I'll just publish. Let's see what it looks like. And there's the text. Now it's not where I really want it to be. It's up to the left of this, and you'll find that sometimes with how you're using images. Now I could, of course, move it to the center. So I might try that in a moment, but there are some other controls that happen in the background begin. So I've obviously added content, but instead of changing like the color of the text or anything in the custom content, all of those controls are in the background begin. So I'm going to come back to my layout tab. And instead of making the changes here in about, I'm just going to come into my background begin. And I'm going to need some padding here. So if we have a look at it, there's definitely something about the padding at the top. I need a bit of space there, and it's not a margin. I could add that on the custom includelet margin, but it's better to control it in the background begin. In case you deleted that out or made a different choice later in the custom content. So I'm going to add some padding in here. So I'll add some top padding. That's where it was. Let's just give that 60. I don't need any bottom padding at the moment. I'll just save, I can save changes. The other thing I want to do is change the text color. So I can change the text color. For now, I'll just pick a random pink. And the header, again, maybe I'll just have white or grey, and let's see what that looks like. May not be, so it's text color and header color that I've just changed, and save changes, and I'll publish. So don't forget, I've gone into the background begin to make those changes. At the moment, it's green and there's a black. If I now, from what I've done in the background begin, it's now this whiter color, and it's still a little bit kind of, it's what I can't control is the left margins on this. It's just the nature of this image. So there's other changes I would then need to make. So I might go back into my layout and say actually in my background begin, I might also change this to column to content with margin. That should give me a bit more space, hopefully. Publish. I'm going quite quickly, but this is playing around a little bit with what's there. So now at least that's kind of more there, and maybe I can change the sizing, go into the custom content and change some of that. And you can do this with any includelet. Now, if I come to the next page, I could do exactly the same thing on any one of these pages. So I could have an individual background begin and end in the layout tab of each of these items, and add in a new thing wherever needed. Sometimes pages don't, like a news page like this, maybe I don't need it, but I might say, actually, I'm going to have the same image and the writing. It might just be the name of my organization, for example. I want that across every page. Now, I don't need to do that manually if it's exactly the same thing. And that's, you might have spotted before. I come back into the layout again and create a new revision to make changes. I need to configure everything to repeat in this way. So there is a repetition that I can do, and it's called, right at the bottom, you might have spotted it. There's something that says inherit this includelet to sub pages. So don't forget, I'm on the home page. So if I want to inherit, it will inherit to each of these on the top level, all of the pages on the top level, not the ones underneath it. So not this one, fantastic foraging or chestnuts or any of the news pages. It will only be on the home page items. So that's my home page, about test, my useful links, my notice board, whatever I've got enabled at that top menu level. So I'm going to say yes to that. So instead of being no, I'm going to say, and I can choose whether I don't want it on the current page or not, but I'm going to say yeah, and it's the top. Don't forget, I've put this image at the top of the site. So I'm going to say I want that to the top and save changes. Now I can't just do it on the background begin. It's anything I want repeated on those pages. So I'm going to configure the about and do exactly the same thing. So that's my text. And I'll say top and save changes. And then again on the end. So don't forget, I've got to give it a full stop on all those pages as well. So top. So I change all to top and I'll publish. And hopefully this now, I'll just refresh. This now will be at the top, again with footers at the bottom. If you've got information, let's say it's funders logos that you wanted to be at the bottom of every page above your footer, for example, that's where you might do that repetition. What about a newsletter sign up? If you've got a newsletter sign up link, that might be a repeated thing at the bottom of every page, or it might be your contact details. If you don't want to put them down here, you might have your contact details with a different background color. The thing we're going to look at next very quickly is just themes. So at the moment, all of our sites are set up with this theme, which is called the fresh theme. I just wanted to show you that's what the sub menu looks like. So if there's a page underneath about, let's say it was mission or something, and you wanted it, that's what the sub menu looks like in this theme. So it's a grey and then it's a black, and no, you can't change that color. I'm going to come out of content management now and go into look and feel, and this is where your controls are in the overall look and feel. So at the moment you're in the fresh, I'm in the fresh theme, which is this type of menu. There are some options though that I can choose. So I can't change that menu color, but I can choose that primary color, the link color. So when you first set up, it would have been set up with that kind of, there's a dark teal color that is your primary color. And you can see I've changed that to red. I can make that a different color, maybe choose a green. if I wanted to and change that color again. Try and make it, it does know how to choose light and dark, but I would probably for a primary color, depends on how you build your site, but generally if you're just using a primary color, I would go for something darker because it's easier to see. You want people to see your links clearly. So even if you have a light color that you use for your brand, I would go for a darker version of that or a complementary dark color just so that it's like they pop out nicely. You can change your fonts for your navigation and your heading and your body. Um, you can see here I've set them all to be a particular font type. Definitely only have two. So yes, you can change all three, but I would choose two that look nice together or you feel complement your brand or how you want to look. Don't use three because it just gets it looks a bit inconsistent, a bit messy. So I would pick two, and generally that's a heading font that would be different from the body font. So I could say I'm going to choose Google Montserrat, and I'll do that for my nav bar as well. Let's see what that looks like. And then I've got some other options. So you can see here, if you've got that person icon showing at the moment in the top right of your screen when you go to your site, you can hide it. So if you don't want people trying to become members of your site, you could hide that. However, just remember that if you do, it means that you'd have to put /admin at the end of your URL to be able to get to your login page or make a note of your login page because you won't see that person icon anymore. So I'm going to leave it on for now. And there's some other options that I can choose. Ignore this stuff at the moment. There's things you can put in the banner and the header, and it's in what you call raw HTML. So if you need to put things in these kind of upper or lower spaces, you might need to talk to us about how to do that. So that's my simple changes. That's just what I want to have a look at. So if I just click apply, there's no preview with this. It goes live straight away. So if I refresh now, you can see that those titles all change to the green color. So that's it. My buttons, everything has changed to the green because that's what I chose. I might try and choose something a bit more random just to show. There we go. So that changed to something a bit more obvious. If I move away from that and I make a different choice, it remembers this. So don't worry about having to do this again if you make another choice, because in the color scheme, I can also choose a particular color scheme. So I could say, and there are 12 of them. So if I choose readable, for example, you can see that color disappears because it will pick from whatever that theme is. So I'm just going to click apply. And let's have a look. So that's changed it to a different format completely. And you would need help changing the colors if you wanted to change something. So say, for example, I really like this, but I don't like this gray line. I want to get rid of the two gray lines or the whatever. And I want to change this primary color to my red or whatever that might be. You would need us to help you to do that. So when you're looking at themes, think about them as you can't change lots about them, but you might be able to ask us to change a couple of things. So have a really good look around, settle sort of somewhere, and then say, but actually, if I can remove this or do this, it would be great. But there are other themes. So this is if I go back into theme, that's the fresh theme. I could choose clarity, which is quite minimalist and has a kind of more mobile looking website. They're all mobile responsive, so you don't need to worry about that, but it gives you a slightly different option. So it's remembered what I put in before. So I've changed these already before. It remembers it, but if I want to choose something else, let's go back to some sort of red. Make my choices again. Let's click apply. It really is this quick, and I'll just change that again. That's what this particular theme looks like, and it always looks like this. It has a right-hand side menu, a bit like a mobile, so it looks exactly the same on mobile as it does on desktop. The one that's a little bit more fussy is Bootstrap. So the one that's the most difficult to fix your options, not fix your options, but you might try it way and go, I really don't like that. But then you choose another way and you think, oh, actually, that looks all right. So it depends. So if I go back to, so some of these got more complex options. So I might say, yeah, I'll pick my own color. But I actually, the navigation style, I'm just going to say yes to this and apply, and let's see what it looks like. So at the moment, that's called Pills in a Well, which means it's got a dark coloured background, and it's got this is the one that's got the top level drop down like this that you see on some sites on desktop. That's the Bootstrap theme does that. Again, I could say, oh, navbar links on right. I can make some changes with where I want to put the logo, whether I show a banner, and again, click apply, and that will change that again to being on the right. But if I make some other changes now, so navbar links on right, let's choose a different color, readable navbar links on right. Let's see what that looks like. So it's you can sort of start to find combinations, and there might be, so again, this looks different. So the links on the right look different because of the theme that's also running alongside it. So you might want to have a look at some and go, actually, I really like this, although I don't like X. Like I really like this, but I don't want this line around the outside, for example. I don't want to do that. How can I get rid of that? So try and have a really good look around and change the settings and get a feel for what they're doing, and then you can settle where you feel most comfortable.